and welcome to Connected Conversations for Creatives, a place where creatives like you can learn, grow, and connect. I'm your host, Jennifer Carr. This question is for my authors. Have you noticed how the world of publishing is evolving right before our eyes? In a time where the boundaries between traditional and indie publishing are blurring, how do we navigate this dynamic landscape? And what does it mean for you as a writer or even a reader? Today, we're going to take a deep dive into the shifts happening in the publishing industry. As an author, it's essential to understand these changes, not just to adapt, but to thrive. Indie publishing has democratized the way books are published and consumed, offering unprecedented opportunities for authors to reach their audiences directly. On the other hand, traditional publishing continues to hold its own, offering structure, resources, and prestige. So how do these worlds coexist, and how are they shaping the future of storytelling? Well, our guest today is someone who embodies this blend of traditional and indie publishing. Robin Jeffrey is a hybrid author who understands the nuances of both worlds. With a foot firmly planted in each, Robin brings a unique perspective on how indie publishing is changing reader engagement, authorial creativity, and the treatment of authors by publishing houses. Her work emphasizes the importance of creating meaningful connections within the creative community, aligning perfectly with our podcast's mission. So I'm hoping that throughout conversation, Robin will share insights on how readers are discovering books in new ways, the benefits and drawbacks of being a hybrid author, and maybe even some invaluable tips on avoiding creative burnout while living a fulfilling creative life. So if you're ready, let's welcome Robin to the show. Robin, thank you so much for being here and welcome to the show.
Oh, hello. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here. I love the idea behind this show. I love all the episodes I've listened to. I'm so excited to be a part of this.
I'm glad you're here too. And I love actually meeting people. We kind of had a little pre-show, meeting where it's like, hey, I'm Jennifer. Like I feel connected to you because I do follow you on TikTok and I see your stuff and I'm liking your stuff. But there's something different about having a face-to-face conversation. So I'm really excited to just kind of dig in and be like, now tell me everything about you. And so
yes, absolutely. Let's get the deets. Let's spill some tea.
That's right. And give us some behind the scenes information here. Things that some of us will never see and some of us we want to know. We just gotta know. So before we get to that, though, do tell us about yourself and maybe when you first discovered your passion for writing. How did that happen?
Yeah, so I've always been a storyteller ever since I was little. I was always the person who wanted to play pretend. That was me. I was always making up stories, always going on wild tangents about the aliens and the space heaters and it just everywhere. I was the crazy one. And my sister always liked to play along with me. I have an older sister, Megan. She always played along with me until one day she got old enough that she didn't want to play pretend anymore. And it broke my heart.
Yeah.
Broke my heart. And then I realized that I didn't need her to play pretend. I could play pretend by myself with this thing called writing. Yeah. And so that was around, I think, 7 or 8. And I started just scribbling away these little stories to myself. And ever since then, I just haven't stopped. The stories have gotten weirder and crazier and longer. And I just keep on writing and playing pretend by myself, essentially.
I love that because that's definitely what we do.
Mm-hmm.
That's fantastic. I was the kid who, when my sister was like, I don't want to play with you today. She's younger. I'm the older sister. I was like, fine, I don't need you. So I would line up my stuffed animals and we would have our own, whatever we were playing. They would be my people that I played with. And so,
yes, I did the
do what
same
you gotta
thing.
Do. Yes, you just make it work.
Mm-hmm. You work with what you have.
Yes, and sometimes that imagination does not let go. And so you have no choice but to do something with it. And so I love that you were just like, I need to keep telling my stories. Were there any stories from your childhood that kind of spilled over into your adulthood writing?
Definitely some of so I write a urban fantasy series called The Night. And ever since I was little, I was obsessed with like wolves and dogs, and werewolves was a big thing for me when I was growing up. And I feel like sometimes the night is kind of my little teenage and childhood self being like, yeah, play with werewolves, get the big dogs out, let's go rip up some stuff, it's going to be awesome. And that's what I got to do now.
That's the best. I love that. Sometimes you just go back, you got to get stuck back in that childhood. I know I was just talking about the childhood trauma of going to the dentist, before we got online, but there are also good memories from childhood that I don't mind bringing into my work,
Yeah, for sure.
Oh, that's funny. Were there any books or were you a reader as a kid? I'm assuming you were probably a voracious reader. Yeah. What were the books and authors that inspired you to kind of to follow along the journey of becoming a writer?
Well, a big one for me was definitely Agatha Christie. I always say that I can't write a book without there being a dead body somewhere. Someone's gonna end up murdered. It's gonna happen. No matter what the other genre is, it's gonna be a mystery, and someone's gonna die. I can't help it. And that's definitely down to Agatha Christie. I devoured her books from age 10 till today. I still reread and my endless collection of Christie's here. So I loved her work. And then Neil Gaiman and Terry Pratchett have been really big influences on me. I love their humor. I love their kind of unflinching examination of human foibles. I think is so great and something that I try to emulate in my own work. And they just have fun. They have fun. Like, you can tell they love to write, and they love playing with words, and they love telling stories. And I wanted to do that too.
You can tell when somebody likes writing. You can tell, like, they pour so much something different into it than those who they may have liked it at the beginning, but now it's like a routine that they've gotten into. I'm like, no, show me that you still love it, and I will wait. You want to give me a year between books? I will wait for the passion that you're going to throw into that work. Please, by all means. Yeah,
absolutely.
You can tell. Yeah. Okay. So then what was your first attempt at writing a book like?
Oh, gosh. My first attempt at writing a book, honestly, fan fiction. Has to be fan fiction. I'm going to admit it right here and right now.
Nice.
It was actually Elizabeth. If you know Elizabeth Peters, she writes historical fiction mysteries. An Amelia Peabody mystery series is what I got hooked on when I was 13, 14. And it's like the nerdiest thing to write fan fiction about ever. It's like this ancient Egyptian historical romance mystery series, and I was like, I'm gonna write my own character in this world, and I had this whole thing plotted out that I was gonna write, and I got like 3 chapters into it and then abandoned it, which is very typical for I think your first time writing. You're like, this is gonna be easy, and then you're like, oh no, this is hard.
Joke's on me.
Oops, I don't like this when it gets hard. But I kept on coming back to projects like that in fandoms that I loved. Didn't finish anything. And it wasn't really until college that I got serious about sitting down and finishing the first draft of a book.
That's fantastic. And you had to get that practice in anyway, right? Like, there's something about that first million words that you got to get it in there. And then it's like, okay, now I feel pretty confident in what I'm about to do. And, I say million. Some of us haven't quite gotten to 1 million words, but we're feeling pretty confident in our work. So I'm feeling all right about that. But, there's just something about getting in the routine of writing too, because that's something that I struggle with still, is that I'll go binge write, and then I'm like, I never want to write again, and then I'm like, nah, I got to get back in there. So there's a routine to it. You kind of have to build up.
Yeah, absolutely. There's kind of muscle memory of just knowing how to put words onto a page in a way that makes some sense.
Right. At least to you, if nobody else, because there are times I go back and read it and I'm like, I don't know exactly what I meant there. Actually, my editor sent me a comment the other day. She was like, I'm not sure what this means. And I read it and I was like, I don't think I was drinking when I wrote that. Like, I don't either. I have no idea what that means. It happens, though.
Yeah, I'm sure it made sense at the time, but past me and present me are not communicating. I don't know what this is.
Totally different people right now. I'm not dissociated for a moment. Yeah. Oops. Okay, so you got your first book written, your first draft written in college. Did you publish that one, or was that one you held on to?
Both. The answer's both.
Okay.
So I held on to that first draft for a long time. And I would say probably for like 3 or 4 years, I didn't do anything with it. I just let it sit in a drawer, and I worked on other projects. I spent a lot of my time kind of between the end of my undergrad. I went to grad school for one thing, so that took up a lot of time. Yeah. But as far as my writing work goes, I spent a lot of time focusing on shorter fiction, like flash fiction and microfiction.
Nice.
And getting those published in magazines and journals and stuff like that. And I think that was enormously helpful, first of all, just to get to know the business of writing, and actually getting paid for my writing the first time. That was so exciting.
Good feeling.
Yes, such a good feeling. To be like, wait, I gave you words and you gave me cash? I love this. Yes. Let's do this forever. But working on those shorter pieces just made me go, okay, I can actually craft something meaningful that other people will want to read. And so I went back to that first draft about 3 or 4 years after I written it, and I just started editing, mercilessly cutting. And I'm so glad I had that buffer period where I no longer felt precious about that first draft, because it was a mess. It was bad. Not bad, but it was first draft bad.
Right.
Where it was just like, wow, I could see, like, at the core I had a good idea, but I had a lot of weird stuff around it. And I must have gone through 12 or 13 different full edits of that draft. And it wasn't until 2021 that I finally looked at my 12th or 13th draft, and it was like, you know what? This is ready. I love this book still. I've been through like 10 years with this book. I think I want people to read this. And so that was the first book I ever ended up publishing. And I self-published that one.
Okay, so we self-published the first book. Was that a good experience, or was that just a learning experience?
It was actually a great experience. Yes. I loved it. It felt enormously empowering. I felt very welcomed by the rest of the indie author community. I loved it. I had a ball doing that first one. The learning curve was steep, but yeah, almost a wall. But but you know, you get some climbing tools, and you can manage to kind of scale your way up it. And once at the top, if you're ever at the top of that learning curve, once on the upward trajectory of the learning curve, you're like, okay, like I can do this. I got this. And it felt amazing.
Oh, yeah. Sometimes it is a little bit like Sisyphus, right? We're just going to keep going up, see what happens. We might we'll never get there. Because you're right. It does kind of shift a little bit. It kind of gets a little taller. Things keep changing, which we're going to talk about that in a minute. Like, I'm very interested to hear your thoughts on the indie publishing world right now, because I've only been in it for about 3 years, and it's already different from when I started 3 years ago. And I'm just like, oh my, like, the changes are something.
Yes.
But before we jump into that, so let's talk about, because it is a lot of work to publish for yourself. Mm-hmm. Was there ever a point where you were like, I don't want to do this anymore? Like, I'm finding that burnout, because I struggle to maintain my creativity while also doing the business side of things.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would say that's something that I've experienced, and that's something I continue to experience kind of cyclically. Where it's like you hit that wall once again, for lack of a better word, where it's like, wow, I don't think this is sustainable. I can't write the way I want to write and get my books to people in the way I need to get my books, marketing, selling, doing events, doing all the things I need, I'm told I need to do. I can't do it. Like, I'm only one person, and there are only so many hours of the day, days in the week, et cetera, et cetera. I should just quit. I mean, I've had that thought many times over the years, where it's like, maybe I should just stop doing this. But what stops me from doing that is a lot of things, which I'm sure we'll get into. But one thing in particular is that every time I kind of slow down, I feel that urge in me to keep going.
Yes.
Where it's like there is that inner drive of like, I really do love this. Mm-hmm. I really do love putting the books out there. I really do love seeing my work connect with people, and I really do love it. So in the end, it is worth it. It's just that matter of, like you said, kind of finding the balance and recalibrating, what you need to do versus what you can do.
Yes, recalibration happens quite regularly around here. I get so excited, right? I'm so excited. I think that's what kind of drives me. And then I realize I'm tired. And then I kind of slow way down, or, family picks up, or, summer commitments are picking up. And I'm not going to lie, I'm ready for June to be over. Like, I just am. Like, it just is what it is. I'm ready for June to be over, because that's one of my busiest months. May and June was crazy. And so once June's over, I feel like I'll be able to breathe a little bit. But that's just going to ramp back up into book launch for, October. And I'm just like, oh. So I think, how do we find that balance? Do we stop before we get tired? Do we keep pushing through and hope for the best? What's your formula there for that?
Well, I definitely always want to caution against just the push through mentality. And I say that to myself with pot calling the kettle black kind of. It's like, please don't push through, because I've tried it before, and it never ends well. You think like, oh no, if I can just make it to the next week or the next event or the next thing that I need to check off the list, it'll be fine, and I'll find a second wind or something. And you're like, know what? No, I just feel worse. I
Mm-hmm.
feel worse. I feel more burnt out and more depressed or less optimistic, more pessimistic, whatever you want to say. Like, I just feel terrible.
Mm-hmm.
So when you're starting to feel tired, I always kind of try to take that as my signal of I need to start thinking about recalibrating, basically.
Yeah.
Now, being able to notice the signs of feeling tired,
There it is.
I'm not always great at that.
Right.
Because, like I said, I do tend to want to just be like, no, it'll be fine. I'll catch a second wind. It'll be good. And that's where I feel like having people in your life who are like involved in your work and your creative flow is really important. Because, like, my husband is enormously supportive of my work, as is my family, my sister and my mom. And anytime I start kind of revving the engine up too high, inevitably at least one of them will come to me and be like, do you think you're doing too much? Maybe. Like, they never push it too hard and be like, you need to stop.
Right.
But they always just do it very diplomatically of like, hey, do you think maybe you've taken on a little too much right now? Just put it out there. And then and that is my signal to be like, have I? Oh. Yeah, that's why I'm so tired and grumpy all the time.
Makes so much more sense. Why I'm so the same way. Like, I don't recognize it in myself until somebody calls me out on it. And
Yeah.
so yeah, I'm with you. Yeah.
Yeah, you got to have that support network who is looking out for you and knows you at least as well as you know yourself, if not better, to kind of step in and just be like, you need a break. You need a break. You need to recalibrate. And you need to be kind to yourself. Just be kind to yourself. You're not a machine. You are a person. I need to remember that constantly.
Well, and the quality of your work that you put out starts to suffer, and
Exactly.
it goes back to I can tell when somebody's writing when they love it and when somebody's writing because they have to.
Yeah.
I can tell in my own work when I go back to read it, but in the moment I'm like, okay, I've got this, I'm doing this, and I'm sitting there pounding out the words as best I can. But I'm with you, like, I have to have somebody, and that's hard because I do have a fantastic husband who will say, you're looking a little busy, like you've got that support system immediately there. So how do people who don't maybe have that immediate surrounding, where do we find people who we can trust, who can say, hey, your creativity might be starting to suffer? Have you found online communities or?
Yeah, and that's exactly what I was about to say. It's like, I think really connecting with online writing communities is so pivotal.
Yeah.
I'm a member of several different online writing communities. Savvy Authors is one of them. I'm a member of my local romance writers guild, I guess is what we call ourselves. They're the Emerald City Romance Writers. They're fantastic. We have a Discord. Like, I'm a member of various writing groups that connect via Zoom and other things, and it's just so nice to have a place to go to if you think you might be getting tired, or just a place that you check in regularly. We have, with the romance writers, we have these daily co-work sessions where we just go in, and you don't have to commit to be there every day, but you just go in and clock in, say hi, you work, and during the breaks you have a little time to just say what's going on in your life. And the number of times that someone there has been like, wow, that sounds really intense, what you're doing. And that's sometimes all the check I need to be like, hey, that is really intense. Should I back off a little bit?
There's my caution light.
I'm like, oh, I didn't think doing 4 shows in a month was that intense, but I guess maybe it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so, finding an online community, essential. And so
I
helpful.
agree. It is helpful. And I'm not one of those people that I am very particular with who I surround myself with. Like, that's just me as a person, not even as an author, just as a person. And it's taken me almost 40 years to get to that point where you can't just trust everybody with with yourself, with your best interest. And so it took me a little less, maybe 30 years, because it's been the last 10 years of mental peace that's been really nice. And so, but then it ramped back up to, how do I trust people with my work? Or how do I trust people with this part of myself? Because, when you're an author, you're bearing your soul in a way to just to the world, even if it's maybe not your feelings. It's your character's feelings on the page, and they came from somewhere. So I was like, how do I trust people with that? But I think the right people, you're kind of drawn to each other. At least that's how it's kind of worked for me. It's like, oh, yeah, you connect with somebody and you think, okay, let's test the waters and see how that goes. So yeah, I agree. Those people they're crucial. They are crucial to the journey for sure.
Yes, absolutely.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so let's shift into talking about the publishing experience, because you do a little bit of both. You're a little indie, a little traditional. How did that happen?
So that happened like I said, the first book I ever published was indie. And that kind of kicked off my Cadence Turing mystery series. That's my series of classic murder mysteries with sci-fi twists.
Nice.
And so that one's all independently published. But all the while I'm working on that, I can never work on one project at a time, because
why?
Who would
Why
do
would
that?
You?
That makes too much sense. So
We're
all the while,
yeah,
exactly. All the while I'm working on those books and doing the self-publishing thing, I was writing other projects. One of these happened to be a kind of urban fantasy werewolf book, as I mentioned before. That was kind of one of the books of my heart that I was like, this is really fun. I want to play in this kind of paranormal world. And I started shopping it around, doing the query trenches, reaching out to literary agents, and then actually through one of those online writing communities that I mentioned, Savvy Authors, they had I think right now it's twice a year. They have a pitching event where you can pitch your book in like 3 sentences to editors from small presses and literary agents. And I went ahead, pitched my books to a whole bunch of folks, and a small press was interested in my wacky werewolf book and wanted to read the full manuscript. I sent it off with hope in my heart, but a
reality at your door.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. A realistic grounding, under my feet, going, I probably won't hear anything back from this, or if I do, it'll be this was very nice, no thank you. Which you get used to, of course. I mean, I don't have to tell you that, but you get used to it.
I do, unfortunately.
And then I was very surprised a few months after I sent off the manuscript to get an email back from them saying, we really like this, but we're kind of focused on series right now. Do you think you could turn this into a series? And I was like, absolutely, yes. And they're like, cool. Could you give us like a synopsis of the next 5 books in the series? And I went, yes, I can definitely do that. Spent the next 48 hours frantically typing out synopses for books that did not exist in any sense before then. And sent them off with more hope and dreams of grandeur. And they liked it, and we signed a contract. And it happened very slowly and very quickly, which I think is somewhat the norm with trad pub, where it's like it takes forever and then nothing, and then suddenly everything happens really fast, and then it takes forever again.
Oh. So. Well, that's fantastic, though, because that is a feeling of, like, I literally sent only 3 this time. The first time I ever queried, it was like almost 100, and it was like 100 rejections to come with it, and I was like, man, that hurts. Like it stings a little bit. You're just like, man, what am I doing wrong?
Yeah.
It's not you. It's probably not you. Like it might be. They'll never tell you, but. Right. So just assume it's not you, and that it's just not the time or the place for your work, and just know that the universe has that in mind. But I did send out 3 queries last week. I've already gotten 1 rejection. It was pretty fast. I was like, okay, got it. No problem. Nice to meet you. We're good. And so you do sit there and wait. But that's what I told my little accountability group. I was like, well, I sent these out, but I'm really just going to say it was because I was tired that day and was done with what I was doing. I was like, I want somebody else to take this job from me. And, that's not how that really works. But in my mind, somebody else was going to take the responsibility for my work.
Yeah, there you go.
It's like, I quit. I'm done. Okay, so you started working with a traditional publisher, a small press publisher.
Yes, small press.
Which, in my opinion, I think that would be ideal because there's so much, probably, in my opinion, I don't know, this is just me guessing, a lot more open communication and availability as opposed to if you went large publishing.
Yeah, well, once again, I have limited experience with larger publishers.
Right.
Only what I have heard in my own writing groups.
Same. Yeah.
My experience with my small press is that yes, they are very receptive, very engaged, very easy to, I know exactly who my editor is. I know exactly who my cover artist is. I can just email them. Like it's one-to-one connection.
Yes.
And that is very, very nice. It's not a team. I mean, it is a team. Obviously, at some level, it's a team. But working with me one-on-one is literally a person.
Oh, that's the best. Yes. And that's okay. So when you're working in that way, do you have a lot more say in how your work is treated at that point? If they say, hey, we need to make a change, can you say, I refuse to make that change? Or is there still, they kind of win that one out?
They still kind of win that one out. And I guess if I had to say one thing about like the experience I've had in trad versus indie publishing, the control aspect will drive some people up the wall. And yeah, and I think I'm thinking that I'm turning out to be one of those people where it's like, man, giving up that control after you've had it too, especially having done and continuing to do series indie, it's like, man, it's rough having to wait on other people sometimes and have to give up decision making to other people. And so, yeah, so I mean, I have a certain amount of input, obviously, which is very nice. And I think I have more input than I would with the bigger publisher. I actually get to, have arguments with my editor as opposed to just being told this is what we're doing. I actually get to go back and forth and be like, no, I really don't want to add that character in. I don't think they fit. Or I really like that scene and I'd like to keep it. I'm not going to cut it. And most of the time I get my way. But there is still some of that. You signed a contract and we said that we were going to publish what we wanted to publish, and that's what we're going to do. Especially with like covers. I was given 4 covers to choose from, and those were the 4 covers I had to choose from. And if I didn't like any of them,
too
bad.
Oh my God.
I had to like one of them. Luckily, I got very lucky with my cover for the first Night book, and it's fantastic. But it could have not been.
Right. Oh my gosh. And see, that kind of makes me break out into a little bit of a sweat. Like I was like, I don't know if I could do that, honestly. And honestly, you're still marketing your own stuff in a lot of ways, right? Like that's still part of your responsibility.
Yes. I mean, the publisher, to be fair, the small press publisher, like they do help, which is great. Yeah. And that is one of the reasons to go with small press is that not all of the marketing falls firmly on your shoulders. They will help out with kind of connecting you to certain kinds of reviewers and doing their own publishing, marketing pushes and stuff like that through their contacts. But yes, you are still expected to do your part of the heavy lifting of putting your book out there, doing promos, doing ARC reviews, doing giveaways, doing all that stuff. To the point where, it was like, am I trad pubbing this or am I indie this? I feel like I'm on the same kind of release schedule that I am with all my indie books.
Yeah. And see, that's another thing. I think that's a myth that people think that, oh, my book goes traditional in any form or fashion, then it's hands off. All I have to do is write the story. And that's really not what I've understood. In the last couple of years, I've really started to see that maybe I don't, because I am a type A, like you give me all the control, I will make all the decisions, and I am a happy little duck. But you try to fight me for it and I'll be like, you'll see a side of Jennifer you've never seen before. Like, like we'll turn the camera off and we'll just, but yeah, no, that's interesting. It's a very, I don't know, that's a world that I want to explore, but I don't.
Yeah. Well, and it can be scary to sign that contract, and just be like, yeah, this is essentially yours now for X amount of time. And to just be like, I don't know that I like that. Especially if for, us type A people where it's like, I don't know, this is my baby. I want it to do it my way. And not let anybody else, say this is theirs.
Yes, I want it to be a reflection of me because I put so much into it. And not that I'm trying to sell me, but I want it to look like me when I put it out there. I want it to be like my kid. She looks nothing like me. She looks 100% like her father, except that she's a girl. And I'm just like, I did all this work. Why can't you look? But she does have my sarcasm and wit, so we'll give her that. But that's
so that's a direct reflection.
Right, exactly. But
Yeah.
you don't see it when you look at her. I want it to be me when you see it. And so, no, it's fine. We knew that she would look just like him because the 4D ultrasound said she would. But anyway, it's a funny story. But anyway, okay. So thinking about traditional versus indie, like with the readers, do you see a reader engagement difference from your indie books versus your traditional books?
Well, and this is something that I think is super interesting to talk about, especially right now, because I'm seeing a real shift where I used to see that, like anytime I would take out my indie published books, like that was the first question on my like readers or people I was trying to like hand sell the books to. The first question was like, is this indie published? Or with that kind of tone too, where it's like, I don't know that I want an indie published book. And it's like, and it always felt like an uphill battle to try to convince people. It's like, hey, indie published is not synonymous with bad quality.
Right.
But lately, there has been this shift where it's like readers kind of, not that they don't care, but they are much more open-minded than they used to be.
Yes, they are.
They just want a good story.
Yep.
And if you can package it in a pretty way and make it look appealing and write well, they're not so concerned with who's got their logo on the spine. They just want it in their hands.
Yes, exactly. Yes, and I love everything about that. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah, I think it's fantastic. So at the beginning, I saw that there was a real difference in how my readers connected. But over the last, like, I'd even say year and a half, it's been much more of a shift of like, I don't to make it. My readers saying that I don't make the distinction between those two. You write well. It's a well-written story. I love it.
Yes, and I don't think as a reader I ever once thought, I wonder who published this, or how, if I don't like it, like I'm not going to read it. If I like it, I'm going to read it. I never once thought, I wonder if this was Random House or that person,
like, I wonder if this was the Big Five and they got an advance or like,
like, and we're on this side of the curtain now, so we can see what the influence is. And I had season 3 of my podcast here actually launches tomorrow. Like the first episode of season 3 launches. Yeah, I know. So your episode will be in just a few weeks if you think about it. It's not a few months, I guess. But the first week is about cancel culture in the arts and how there have been so many cases of cancel culture for no reason. Like people are just getting canceled or they don't share an opinion anyway. And I'm not bringing up controversy here, but I'm just saying, I was going to say that I think a lot of people are seeing that the traditional publishing houses, the big ones, they're a little too big for their britches. They're like, we get to say what goes in books, what has to go in books, and you can't just say anything in our books anymore. And, there's this mindset of, well, then I may as well just go indie because they'll say anything in their books.
I can get away with all kinds of stuff and get away with, I can do it the way I want to.
Exactly. And you can sell that book to the person that wants to read it directly. And there's just something to be said for that. There's just, I don't know, there's more freedom in being an indie reader as much as there is being an indie author, I think.
Yeah, exactly.
Which I love. Do you think it's easier to connect with the readers as an indie versus the traditional? Like when you're talking about your work, is it easier to talk about the indie work or vice versa?
I think it is a little easier to talk about the indie work because there's less of that barrier there. There's more of the like, I wrote this. It is, the work can be more responsive. Yeah. That makes any sense. There's like, I had someone ask about my cover art for the Cadence Turing series after the first book had come out. And then I was like, oh, I forgot to put in like the social media handles for my cover artist. And I was like, that would have been so good to do. But then easy change. I just put it in the next edition and there it is. It's done. Someone asked me. But I can't do that in my trad. Like, if someone's like, oh, there's this typo here, or I really wish you could have put in something like this here, I can't go back and fix it. I mean, not that I do that for every suggestion I get, but sometimes readers bring up good things that they would like to see. Yeah. And it's like, oh, yeah, I can do that. And they love seeing that responsiveness and that you're actually listening to what they want and can give it to them.
I agree. I think that's so true. And I have loved, because this is the first time that I formed an art team for my book that comes out in October. I formed an art team, and I am so excited about it. Like, I don't know that that would have happened with a traditional situation. Like, I wouldn't have had as much say in who was part of it. I wouldn't have had as much say as in what we do with it. And so I have just loved building that little community of people who love indie books, and particularly mine. That kind of comes in handy. But it's just like, oh, it's so, I love it. I love that connection that I am free to make. And I don't know that I would have had that opportunity otherwise.
Well, sometimes I feel like trad publishers are also so concerned with, in the marketing side of things, and then by marketing I do mean like connecting with readers, making sure things are as broadly appealing as possible.
Yeah.
And the question I would always get when I was trying to first break into trad publishing was, well, where does this fit on the shelf? It needs to have a clear shelf label. Where does it fit on the shelf? And it would drive me up the wall, because I don't write books that fit neatly in one genre subsection. And I do that on purpose, because I don't want to write that.
Right.
And so with indie publishing, though, you can market to people who like Agatha Christie meets Blade Runner. And you can find them and just market directly to them. And you don't have to worry about where it's going to fit on their shelf. It's like, no, they know it fits between Agatha Christie and Blade Runner. They know. They get it.
That's a fantastic shelf. I love that.
It's a great shelf. And they want it in their house. So I have a book for them.
Oh my gosh. And see, I love that too, that we market directly to the readers who will appreciate our work. It's not going to get lost in the void, because I think that's what happens a lot. We went to Books A Million yesterday, and we walked in. That's just one of our free, we have free time. We're going to go walk around the bookstore. Do I love big chains? They're not my favorite, but it's something to do. And Yogurt Mountain is located there, so obviously. And so we walk in, but it's so overwhelming. Every time I walk in, I'm like, all the books. There's so many books. I cannot find I can't even think about what I would even want to pick up off a shelf. Whereas I have my indie world over here, and I'm like, I know exactly which shelf I'm going to go to, because it's Agatha Christie and Blade Runner all on one shelf. I know exactly what shelf I need to look at. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
It's not overwhelming. It's very specific.
Yeah, it's subdivided in such a way that's like, I know exactly what I want, and I know exactly who to go for that.
Yes. And I think, social media is one of those things, and we can talk about that too, that is such a part of it, because the algorithm does it works for us and against us, because it does show us those people who are going to have the books that we're looking for. It'll show the readers that we have books that they are looking for. And so, but what are some of the challenges you faced on social media? Because I know my list is very long.
Yes. Yeah. Social media can be so useful and so frustrating at the same time. I mean, feeding the hungry algorithm is exhausting. You want to talk about things that lead to burnout? Oh my God. There have been so many days when I'm just like, oh, I forgot to make a post.
Yep.
I forgot to make a post. I don't have posts queued up for the next week. What am I going to do? And it's like, I wish I didn't have to feed the algorithm as regularly as you do, but
I mean, geez Louise.
Yeah. So, I mean, just the fact that you do have to be constantly creating content, on top of the fact that, we're writers, so we are creating content, just not content that's bite-sized and social mediable, can be very frustrating. But on the other hand, I have found, like you said, it's a great place to connect with readers so directly and on such a visceral level, where it's like, you can say like, yeah, I have a soft boy set in Seattle werewolf romance, and they're like, I want that.
Right?
I want that. And you're like, I got you. You want
Here's
some werewolf urban fantasy? Here you go. And it's wonderful. No other platform would let you do that. But it can be really hard to kind of break through, and with the algorithms changing, and to figure out what hashtags do I use. And then I struggle with FOMO with social media a lot, of like, should I be on this platform? Should I switch over to do this? Should I do Twitch streams? Should I do, and it's like, you know what? It goes back to that. I can only do what I can do.
Yep.
I can't do everything I need to do. I can only do what I can do.
Yes. That is something that like with right now, I have a video that has gone viral on TikTok. It has over 1.3 million views.
Oh,
It's not even anything to do with me or my work. It's a stitch that I did 2 years ago and reposted. And it has
no.
nothing to do with books. It has nothing to do with me. And I was like, I have brought on almost 3,000 followers in the last 3 weeks, maybe. They're not readers. I promise you, based on the video they liked, and they're not readers.
Yeah.
But there they are. And so now my videos go a little higher up in the algorithm until they don't. And so,
Yeah.
it's like, what are we doing here? What are we doing? I don't even know. But it's exhausting because
Yeah.
I thought the same thing this morning. I thought, oh, shoot, I haven't uploaded and scheduled my trailers for next week. Like I'm behind. I'm already behind. And now that's one more thing I have to think about.
Yeah, I can't tell you the number of times I have like crafted a TikTok video. spent an hour crafting a TikTok video and posted, and it gets like 300 views,
Maybe
20
if you're
likes.
lucky.
If you're lucky, and you're like, and then I do a TikTok video like with messy hair in my pajamas, and like 5 minutes post it. It goes like totally viral. I'm like, why do you do this? And yeah, and inevitably it's never about my books. It's always about like, hey, I had pizza for breakfast or something.
Right.
And everyone's like, super relatable. And I'm like, no.
Books are too.
But books are also relatable.
Oh my God. Yeah, no, it's a struggle. I actually broke down and I hired a little virtual assistant to like college student to work just a few hours a week to schedule all of my stuff for Facebook and Instagram so I don't have to. I was like, I cannot do all of these things because you have to have different content for all the places. And I was like, I tell you what, let me tell you what the theme is for the month or for the week, and you just make them fit and you schedule them and you make them and whatever. She loves it. I think she has a new career ahead of her. I'm like, we are helping each other out, sweetheart. And it's real cheap labor because I can't afford a whole lot, because being an author is not the way to get rich. Just so you know.
No. In case anyone listening wasn't aware of that. It's
yeah. Just throwing that out there. I'm not trying to dissuade you. I'm just telling you this is a job that you do for the passion.
Yes, you do it because it fills you up by your soul, not by your pocketbook.
That's right. Because and maybe one day it will. Maybe one day it will. We can only be so lucky. That I'm not saying it's not a dream, that it's not a goal, but I also am a realist, and I know that right now I am happy doing what I'm doing, and I may have to not have a virtual assistant next month. It just is what it is.
Exactly. Everything's in flux all the time.
All the time. And for a type A, that is so hard.
It is so hard. Yes. I have found that myself since I started doing this full time, where it's like I have to be comfortable with uncertainty, and I am not, but I'm learning to be, trying to be, but it's like, wow, this is really hard.
Yes. Maybe by my last day on Earth, I will be a perfectly well-rounded human and will have learned from all of this. But in the meantime, I'm getting a lot of gray hair.
Yeah.
Just is what it is. Oh my gosh. Let's see. Okay, so we are kind of to the point of the show where we're going to flip the script, and I'm going to let you be the host of the show. And so you are welcome to take it from here and do with the show what you will.
Okay, so I have a few questions for you, Jennifer, if you are ready to answer them.
Sure. Thanks for having me.
So I understand you're also an author.
Yeah.
I had a question for you. Do you ever do like in-person hand selling events, like Comic-Cons or book fairs or author reader events or?
Okay, so I have only done one as an author, and it was back in March, and I will be honest, I was a little disappointed only because I don't think it was advertised well. But I love doing events, period. Like I used to do networking events all the time with one of my other businesses, and I loved it. I love that connection that you make with people. It puts you in front of people and not just your product. And I think that's what a lot of times people love most about indie authors, is that they can get in front of them a lot easier. But I did do one author event, and I loved the fact that I was able to network with other authors. That was kind of cool. But like there was one sale for the day, and yeah, and then I ended up giving away a free book to another author who gave me her book. I was like, dadgummit, look, I was a little, it's fine. But yeah, so we didn't make money on that one. but it was fun.
Do you have any tips for people who want to do like in-person events, but they find it? I talk to a lot of authors who want to do in-person events, and they're like, I am terrified of pitching my book to someone or like asking someone to buy something from me in person. Do you have any like tips about how to get over that or how to face that?
So it's okay. So I literally was telling somebody this last week, 2 weeks ago. We were having a conversation. He was like, I really need to do events, and they're just not my favorite because I'm an introvert. And I said, honey, I'm an introvert. Like, I am. But when I go to events, I flip a switch, and I am not me. I am me, but I'm the version of me I want people to relate to. The person who I am excited about. I really am excited about my work. I don't always feel that way when I'm at home or just one-on-one, but when I'm in person, I want them to be as excited about my work as I am. And so I flip a switch and I notch things up a little bit. I'm like, oh my gosh, do you like romance books? You know, you just have to come up with a pitch. It is pitching your work, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you have this spiel. And so I'm like, how do you feel about country music? Really? Favorite country artist. And you just, because my book centers on country music reality TV show. Like, that's what the theme is throughout the series. And so you kind of have to hook them at your table, but you also have to have a table that people want to stand at, right? You want them to be interested in what you have. So you want your books on display. So I'm not saying don't be yourself, but I'm saying be the version of yourself that you would be attracted to. Does that make sense? Like, absolutely.
Yeah. And I think that's so important is that people don't realize, like, you don't have to just be, you know, the you that rolls out of bed in the morning and like,
you wouldn't like that me.
No, like you wouldn't want to talk and buy a book from that version of yourself. Like, no, you want to buy the version from like the cool, fully confident, fun version of you.
Exactly.
Yes.
Yeah, no, because you are, especially as an indie author, like, your brand is you, and you are your brand. And if whatever vibes you're putting off, that's what people are going to pick up on. And if it's positive, they'll be drawn to you. And if it's not, they're going to be like, I don't want to read that book because the author left a bad taste in my mouth. You know what I mean? Like, you are it. You are you.
And I feel like that happens a lot more with indie authors than traditionally published authors, where it's like the book and you are so closely associated. Yes. You know, where it's like, I feel like sometimes trad authors get almost a pass where it's like, well, the book was really good, even if they're kind of a bit whereas indie authors, it's like, no, if you come off as not a cool person, whatever that means, you know, like not fun, not friendly, not nice, people will stay away from your work.
They absolutely will. And you know what? I never once really thought that I would pick up a book because of the person, right? I always thought I would pick up the book for the book. But I have had a couple of people that have come through on my show here that I'm like, oh my gosh, I've never read their stuff, but because I was drawn to them, because that person piqued my interest, I picked up their book. And so it's just kind of one of those things. It is a thing that happens, unfortunately. But it's also, I think, because we have to put our work in front of people, therefore they expect us to always be on.
All the time.
And that's hard. It can be exhausting, but you also might learn something about yourself too. Like, I learned that I can be naturally like this. I can naturally interact with people without feeling completely awkward. I just have to practice at it. And so
I learned that I have a lot more self-confidence than I thought I did.
Yeah, seriously. Now, do I recharge for like 2 hours in silence after every conversation I have? Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, absolutely. I leave every like hand sell event and I like go sit in the car and just like,
nobody talks to me the rest of the day. Like, they know that is a rule that we cannot, because my brain is just overwhelmed with everything. And then trying to shut back down a little bit.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. No, but I love events. I do, because even with the last one that was it wasn't a dud, but it wasn't great. The networking that I was able to do, to be able to see how other people, because they had all been at other events together, several of them had. And I thought, ooh, so that's what I need to do. Like, I need to go find, because then they're talking about working on anthologies together. They're talking about their next collaboration or sharing tables and that. And I was like, oh yeah, that just goes back to creating that community where you have people that you don't have to do everything by yourself. That's kind of nice.
Absolutely.
Something to think about.
Do we have time for one more question for me? Or
you ask as many questions as you got, and then we'll just go from there.
So this is kind of a fun one. I'm only asking this because I got asked this recently, and I thought it was like It's not a weird question. I just
It's
thought it
not
was
the
kind
last day of your life question, right?
No,
Like, I
no,
don't
it's not that one. It was if you could write in any genre or like format that you don't currently write in or haven't written in ever, what would it be and why?
Ooh, that's interesting. Um, I think I would love, like, because I've been working on an urban fantasy for a while. He's been on the back burner, though, because this other series is kind of in my head, and that's where I'm living. And so I've been doing an urban fantasy, but to do just straight fantasy, I love reading it because it takes my imagination places. I
Mhm.
think being able to write straight fantasy it'd be amazing. Like, I think like a hard fantasy, yeah. I would love to be able to be that intelligent because that world building sometimes, like the as detailed as you have to be and keeping things straight, that just makes my little executive heart happy.
Yes. Yeah. That's so funny. That was my answer too. Where I was
Was
like, if I
it?
could do like a high fantasy,
Yeah.
like Priory of the Orange Tree, or yeah, like a Samantha Shannon or something, where it's like this whole fantasy world with dragons and wizards and like all. I would love to. I don't know that I'm capable of doing that,
Right.
but I would
Oh.
love if I could. And then my other one was comic books. Like I'm a huge comic book
Oh.
fan, so I was like, if I ever got the chance to write, I don't know how to do it, but if I could learn to write a graphic novel or a comic book, that'd be so tight. I would love that.
That would be okay. So, are you artistic at all? Like, do you do any kind of art or just writing?
No, I
Me
wish I
neither.
did.
Yeah, that would be awesome. So my kid does. Like she is an artist and it drives me nuts because I'm not and it's just not fair. But she had come up, we were talking one day, we'd gone to Starbucks, we were having a mommy daughter day and we were just hanging out. I say mommy daughter, she's 14, so it was mom and daughter, excuse me. So we were hanging out being cool, at Starbucks because we're cool.
Yeah.
And we got to talking about she drew a character and how they just pop into her head and end up on the page is beyond me. It's wild. But she drew this character, and I was like, okay, I just have a backstory for him. And she's like, okay, hit me. And so we started we wrote down this backstory, and I was like, let's do it. Let's put it in a graphic novel. She's like, okay. And then, I have like an outline for different scenes and that kind of thing, because I have no idea how to actually write. I mean, I write 120,000 word books. I can't. I don't know how.
Yeah.
But I have this outline for it. And she was like, okay, yeah, that sounds great. And then a month later, I'm like, hey, you still want to do this? She's like, not really.
You're like, no.
But it was such a good story. I was like, no, it's in it. But I have a really great graphic novel outline if anybody wants to buy it from me, because I'm not going to use it.
Put it out there into the universe.
What am I going to do with it? It's so cool too. I was like, man, I felt pretty good about it because I thought I don't read comic books, but I would be all over this one. I was like, this is a good story. Oh well. But that would be awesome. I would love to be able to do that. No, that's so funny too, because we have the same answer, and I was like, yeah, that's...
Yeah. Yeah, it's like, I wish, if I could just like steal Terry Pratchett or Neil Gaiman's brain and just write like that, I would love to. But I agree with you. It's like, I feel like I'm not smart enough. Like, I don't have that much space in my head.
Seriously. Well, like the urban fantasy that like I said, I've been working on it for a while. I kind of had this brain. I got lost in a daydream is what happened. And so I was like, oh, that sounds like an interesting story. So I started writing it, and I was really into it. And I got about 20 pages in and I thought, I'm exhausted. Like, I was so tired trying to keep up with all the characters over here and their names. And I was like, how do people do this? Like, for books this big, like...
Yeah.
It's exhausting. Anyway, okay, well, I want to ask you, I've got a couple more questions for you. So tell us about what you're working on now. What's coming out that you want to tell us about that you're excited about most?
That I'm excited about the most. Well, like, as I said, I work on several projects at once because that's the way I roll. I think I'm probably most excited about the fact I actually have the second book of the Night series coming out in November. It is called Bloody is the Night. The first book was Hungry is the Night. That was werewolves in Seattle. The second book is werewolves in Los Angeles.
Nice. Well, they're getting around.
They're getting around. So kind of the concept of the Night as a series is that there's this whole like world beneath our world of werewolves and dens in every major city. And so we're kind of hopping around cities and different places and locales, and this one happens to take place in LA. And it's a really fun story. I was really enjoyed doing the research for it. My family grew up in California, so it was nice to kind of revisit some of those landmarks and just really dig into the LA culture. I don't know that LA comes off particularly well, but I think it comes off accurately, if that makes any sense.
It does.
So to everyone who absolutely loves LA, I'm sorry. But I think it's a really good book. I think it's very fun. So I'm really excited for that. And then I'm actually currently working on the third book in the Night series as well, which I'm hoping will be done by the end of July. And so hopefully we'll have that out early next year.
Ooh, that's exciting. How far between do you try to get books out? Like, how quickly do you try to push them out? Or is that by your contract? Do you have a contract that tells you?
No, well, so I try to get them out usually at like 6 months. I try to do at least a book a year, and that's for me like either indie or trad. Like if I haven't published a book in a calendar year, something's off.
Something's wrong.
Yeah, something's wrong.
Go check on Robin. Got it.
Yeah. I'd like to try to publish 2 a year if I can. And you actually just reminded me that my first novella is being published in October. I totally forgot about it.
Nice.
Which
you
is
should
sad
get on that.
because that's important. It is called Dirty Drinks. It is a mafia romance. First time I've ever written in that genre, and I had such a fun time.
Really? I love mafia romance.
So much fun. Yeah, so I have a novella coming out with my publisher in October as well.
Fabulous. That's exciting. I do. I love me. And that is a new enjoyment for me that I discovered. I stumbled upon mafia romance at the beginning of the year, and I was like, ooh, this is fun.
Yeah. Well, it's like my publisher had a call for this. It's a part of an anthology. And they were like, we want to do a mafia romance anthology. And I was like, I kind of have an idea, but this isn't my genre. Like, I don't really write or read in it. And I just started, and it just flowed out of me so easily, and I was like, this is so much fun. I love this. Okay,
did you get a bug then? Is that going to be like something that you do later, you think?
I think so. Yeah. I have a couple ideas percolating that I'm like, I don't think I want to let this go. That was really fun.
Oh, no, I love when that happens. I'm really good at writing like a suspense storyline, but I kind of have tried my hand at this fluffy romance stuff, and I like it pretty good, but the third book of the series has a suspense storyline, and I'm like, I missed that. Like, I really want to write, I like writing that. And so then I kind of thought, I could go in the mafia direction as well. So, it's just such a good, it's gritty, it's dark, it's edgy.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, anything that kind of ups the tension and ups the stakes, I think is so much fun.
Oh, me too. Well, that's exciting. I can't wait to dig into that because, happy place.
Yeah.
Okay, well, in that case, tell us how listeners can connect with you and your work so we can find your mafia romance and your werewolves as well, obviously.
Yes. Yeah, so people can always find me on my website, and that's just robinjeffreyauthor.com. You can also connect with me, as we mentioned, on TikTok. My handle there is @thesidekick_author. I am also on Instagram. My handle there is @thesidekick_IG. And I actually recently just started a Patreon. So if you are looking for some cool swag and things, the little membership perks, you can find me on Patreon under Robin Jeffrey. I'm there. I would very much appreciate your support. But if you just wanted to follow along, I have a newsletter that you can sign up for through my website. And I'd be happy to tell you about all the neat stuff I have going on almost all the time, it feels like.
Yes, because we're gluttons for punishment. We never stop.
Yes, no.
That is what it is. Well, I'll make sure all of that ends up in the show notes, so it's as easy as following the links to get to you. And then I have one last big question. Nobody's ever gotten it wrong before, so are you ready for it?
I am ready.
Fabulous. All right. What is one piece of advice or encouragement you want listeners to walk away with if they hear nothing else?
If they hear nothing else, I want people to hear this. You need to finish what you start. And I know that sounds like a threat, and it kind of is. But by that I mean, you have a thing that you've started because you love it,
Yeah.
and you haven't finished it because you're afraid you're going to mess it up. You got to let that fear go, and you got to finish it, because it is going to fill you up in such a profound way.
Yeah.
And it's going to be your new thing. It's going to be your new reason for being you, and it's going to be great. So you got to finish what you start. Just do it. Let that fear go.
Ooh, I like that a lot. Like, I've not heard somebody threaten the listeners before, and I really like that. Maybe pull back on the mafia a little bit. Just
A little bit. You better finish what you start. Do it.
Or else. No, but seriously, that is because we do think, okay, I can't do this. And then we start, and then we're like, but it'll never be good enough. And so we stop. And we just get into our own heads sometimes. And it's like, here's the thing. My original manuscript is not the one that is between the covers of my books, right? It got edited and edited and edited and edited. But you cannot edit something that's not finished. Like, it will never be a full story. You have to finish it. And I love that. That's fantastic advice. Oh, all right. Well, we've just gone to church this afternoon, folks. Thanks for being here. And no, but seriously, Robin, thanks for hanging out and having this conversation. This was fun. It was so great to finally meet you, too.
Yeah, it was so great to finally meet you, too. Thanks for having me around and chatting with me a bit.
Yeah, let's do it again sometime, especially after that mafia romance gets written.
Yes, yeah, for sure. I'd love to.
Awesome.